President Buhari returns from Holland, secures billions of investments for Nigeria.
As a result of that engagement, the investment of over $5 billion by Shell has come much closer and is almost certain now.
Partner with us to resolve security challenges. Vice President Oshibajo leads with traditional leaders.
GBF flood. Victims resettled in IDP's camp.
And Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on see and buy, implications of vote buying for Nigeria's democracy, plus preparations for Hajj 2018.
See and buy has become the latest cliche in town, Kingsley, and it has a lot to do with the bad precedents in the country's electoral process.
That's right, Kirian. You know, see and buy, stomach infrastructure, money for hand, gawuri, gawena. These are all phrases that describe vote buying in the course of elections in Nigeria.
This worrisome development was said to have played out again at the just concluded governorship election in Ekiti State, where open vote buying, going by the name see and buy, characterized the process.
And while this is not altogether a new phenomenon since the return of democratic governance in 1999, but the rampant and open manner in which this is going on is one that is worrisome. And indeed, of course, vote buying is criminalized in sections 128 and 130 of the Electoral Act 2010 as amended. And many are concerned that in spite of these provisions, nothing is apparently being done to stop the trend of see and buy.
You're right there, Kingsley. Despite the provisions in the sections you just quoted, which not only criminalize voter inducement, bribery and vote buying, but also provided penalties ranging from 100,000 to 500,000 fines or 12 months imprisonment. Both voters and those seeking votes seem to care less as the act continues unabated in every election.
You're spot on, Kirian, and quite frankly, I don't think and cannot even remember if anyone has been convicted for any of these acts of voter inducement and vote purchase. And this is despite the widespread violations of the sections of the Electoral Act that frown or criminalize such conduct. And this is the case in virtually all elections that we've had in the past 19 years, with the latest, of course, being the governorship poll in Ekiti State last weekend.
So what is responsible for vote selling and buying in Nigeria? Why has it persisted? Who should take measures to stop it? When and where should that begin? And how will the electorate and politicians know that it is criminal to sell or buy votes?
All right, Kyria, those are some of the pertinent questions we shall be posing to our guests in one of our topics for discussion this morning. How, of course, to explain, understand, and ultimately deal with the illegal electoral stock exchange of see and buy. Now, in the course of the program, we shall also discuss preparations for this year's Hajj, which is scheduled to commence with the airlift of intending Nigerian pilgrims in a matter of days. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you as always live on the network service of Africa's largest television authority, the television network, by the way, and we are Nigerian Television Authority, Kyria.
Exactly. And I am Kirin Umai also thanking you for joining us this morning on today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. And we have our traditional companion segments, which include newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. But first, let's take the news highlights with Najatu Tijani. Good morning.
Good morning and welcome to the news segment. I'm Najatu Tijani. President Muhammad Buhari is back in Abuja after a highly successful visit to the Kingdom of the Netherlands. While in the European nation, President Buhari addressed the International Criminal Court of Justice on the need for expansion of its jurisdiction to deal with flagrant abuse of trust, illicit financial flows and repatriation of stolen assets. He also met with the Dutch Prime Minister and chief executives of Dutch companies where various investment decisions were secured for the nation's economic development. Some members of the Nigerian delegation described the visit as thought-provoking and highly beneficial to Nigeria.
All over the world invited to speak at the 28th anniversary of the International Criminal Court is very significant. It shows the esteem in which Nigeria is held all over the world now. And then the content of his keynote address was very, very good, very profound.
In a related development, the Royal Dutch Consortium, otherwise referred to as the Shell Group, has announced plans to inject more than $5 billion in Nigeria's oil and gas sector before the end of this year. The chief executive officer of the company, Ben van Beurden, disclosed this while conducting President Muhammadu Buhari on a tour of the refinery in Pernis, the Netherlands.
With his experience in the oil sector, Mr. President was able to discuss with great experience and knowledge with them. And as a result of that engagement, the investment of over $5 billion by Shell has come much closer and is almost certain now to take place very, very, very shortly. That's very important for our economy, especially the investment coming in through this year, and that was a real a major breakthrough.
And closer to home now, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says the partnership between traditional authority and government is crucial to resolving most pressing security issues in the country. He said this while declaring open the National Development Summit of Traditional Rulers in Nigeria, holding in Abuja.
What is existential is whether the institutions can, by exemplifying high values and morals, raise the capacity of the people for high thought, for integrity, and for right doing. In other words, whether our royal institutions can project the highest traditions of our people, and by so doing, encourage the establishment of a good society.
And still on security, the long-drawn fight against Boko Haram in the northeast is gradually being won by the forces of good. The Borno State Police Command has arrested 22 suspected Boko Haram members, destroyed camps, and recovered a cache of ammunition. The suspects arrested by a team led by the Deputy Police Commissioner in charge of Federal Special Anti-Robbery Squad, Abba Kyari, included 3 sub-commanders, 2 logistics suppliers, and 17 fighters of Boko Haram terrorists. 1,200 victims of the recent flood that ravaged several communities in Jibia local government area of Katsina State have been resettled in an internally displaced persons camp. Correspondent Abidu Yunusa reports that the victims have started receiving relief assistance from the Katsina State government.
People that we mobilize already, they started arriving both food items, households like women, children, men clothes, plates, condiments, and other related.
That's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kieran and Kingsley after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem promptly through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiyi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Helen!
Your kitchen gets 10 out of 10.
Thank you.
This also gets a 10. Should we see the toilet now?
Sure.
This gets just 1.
It is clean.
But not perfect 10.
Better than my detergent and bleach? Impossible.
Challenge? Try the new Apic 10X.
Compared to bleach and detergent, Apic sticker formulation removes yellow stains times better, giving you a sparkling clean toilet.
Wow.
Now you also take that
Apic 10X challenge.
Also available in 200 ml pack.
You will not be burning your money again in paying NEPA bills. Thank you very much.
Many people feel they have a responsibility to be irresponsible to those we feel have given them reason to show them irresponsibility.
What I want give us the services, we will pay you after later. But the government has said, pay us, we will give you services after later.
When we shirk our duties to pay for services like lights, do we make it possible for ourselves to be in the light or to dwell in darkness?
How can they be asking for money when light is unstable?
Cold Meter is another mind-blowing and funny episode of your rib-cracking comedy. Professor Jumbo coming your way this week and laugh like never before.
Now,
over and out. Brought to you by Glow.
The largest data network, Glow Unlimited.
And thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Now, time to talk business. Dutch oil company to inject more than $5 billion into Nigeria's oil and gas sector. Let's now join Kunle Adeyeye for details.
The Royal Dutch Shell Group said it intends to actualize this before the end of the year. The chief executive officer of the company, Ben van Beurden, disclosed this while conducting President Muhammadu Buhari on tour of its refinery in Pernis, the Netherlands. The chief executive said it has become imperative to take such decision as about 20% of the crude refined there is from Nigeria.
With his experience in the oil sector, Mr. President was able to discuss with great experience and knowledge with them And as a result of that engagement, the investment of over $5 billion by Shell has come much closer and is almost certain now to take place very, very, very shortly.
In another development, the federal government has said that it will by 2020 provide 1.5 million jobs to Nigerians through the Economic Recovery Growth Plan ARGP. The Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Okechukwu Enalema, disclosed this at the first edition of TechnoServe Youth Entrepreneurship Summit in Abuja. Next is Wednesday's graphic representation of tradings on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeye.
All right, thank you very much, Kunle, for the business package. Next for us now is a review of the headlines in some of today's newspapers.
And now we welcome Bayo Atoyebi, our regular newspaper reviewer. Bayo, good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley. Good
Good
morning,
to
Nigeria.
see you. Yeah, that's right. Let's take a look at the 4 or 5 papers that we have this morning. One of them, of course, with the editorial. Beginning with the Blueprint newspaper. The Blueprint, let's say, front page is quite busy with a number of stories, as different as the others. But there's an obituary that I believe is common to most of the front pages this morning. Blueprint, let's begin with the story. Senate okays 348 billion naira oil marketers subsidy claims, with a rider summons Kachukwu over $10 billion loss in gas leases. And then estimated billing, that's a headline that is in RLB. NBET, that's the bulk electricity trader, and Genco's fraudulent, and that's attributed to Discos. Details of that story can be found on page 33. And an earpiece beside the nameplate there, it says, suspected thugs destroy Melaye's constituency classrooms. Details can be found on page 14. Dino Melaye is the senator from Kogi State. Ex-Chief Justice of Nigeria, Katsina Allo, dies at 76. And Buhari, Autumn, and others mourn. Details of the story can be found inside. The list story says NSITF, that is the Social Insurance Trust Fund, sinks in 62.5 billion naira fraud. And that's according to a panel report, and says no operational manual for funds activities and queries dressing, DSTV subscription, and generator fueling allowances. The photograph you see on the front page there is that of some of the suspected Boko Haram members, including 8 of them who allegedly participated in the abduction of the Chibok schoolgirls, and they were paraded by the police in Maiduguri, the capital of Borno State, yesterday. Police arrest 8 Chibok girls abductors and others. That's on page 18 in greater detail. And then you have another headline there. Egbura welcomes Amakura's meeting with Basa stakeholders. That's in Nasarawa State. INEC to conduct Bauchi, Katsina, and 2 by-elections in 30 days. Federal government names national carrier Nigeria Air. Details on page 36. And how Nigeria survived Niger Delta militancy and IPOP threat, according to Vice President Oshibajo. Kirian.
All right, now let's turn to the Leadership newspaper and the headline Kingsley just read that has to do with the national carrier is actually the main headline on Leadership this morning. Federal government unveils new national carrier, Nigeria Air, in London with 2 riders to own 5% share, targets 81 routes, experts warn against past mistakes. And of course, the photograph here shows Oshibajo commissioning BOA cement Boa Cement plant in Sokoto. And of course, below the nameplate, we have World Bank, federal government roll out 200 million livestock production project. The story is on page 4. And of course, the unveiling of the national carrier is also on page 4 of the leadership. Let's bring in Bio at this point.
Yeah, flags are flying at half-mast in most courts of Nigeria in paying respect to the former Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Aloysius Kasina-Alu. He died at age 76 yesterday. He was called to the English bar in 1967 and the Nigeria bar in 1968. His career at the bench started in 1979 when he was appointed a judge of the Benue State High Court. He rose to the Supreme Court, and during his tenure, he sat on 406 cases, delivered 56 lead judgments, concurred with his colleague on 346, and also delivered 4 dissenting judgments. He was Chief Justice of Nigeria between 30 December 2009 and August 2011. Not many know that he could have become a soldier because he actually enrolled in the Nigeria Military Training College and had further military training at Mons Military College, Aldershot in the United Kingdom. His career path changed, however, when he secured admission to read law in the Ahmadu Bello University. He was age 76. May his soul rest in peace.
That's right. By his soul rest in peace. Incidentally, a couple of years ago, he also lost his wife.
Yes.
There was a freak incident in this compound in Benue. I think there was a windstorm. Yes. And yes, which of course affected the tree, and the tree fell on the wife, you know, who passed away. CJN Kasina-Alu. May his soul rest in peace, as you have said.
Yes. Yes. Now the Nigerian carrier. Federal government has unveiled the branding and livery of the national carrier Air Nigeria. Minister of State for Aviation, Senator Hadi Sirika, did the unveiling at an air show in Farnborough in London. The launch is to be formally made at the end of the year. Guess how the branding came about. There was a name sought over the social media campaign engaging 400,000 mostly youths who came up with the name Air Nigeria. I'm surprised they didn't say Air Nigeria. You know, I use these days. Yes. However, the launch will be supported by government as well as viable funding from public-private partnerships given by intermediary standard. Nigeria Air, for which 81 routes have already been proposed, is to guard against not to repeat the mistakes of its forerunner, the Nigerian Airways. So here, what do we say? Say, Nigeria Air should not go the ways of Nigerian Airways.
Yes, Bio, you know, in connection with this, you know, I'd like you to take your mind back to the very last time Nigeria had an airline. And I think this is a huge success and a big development, you know, in the aviation industry in Nigeria. Of course, knowing fully well that in the past 30 years or more, we've not had a national carrier before now.
Nigeria Airways was one of the best on the continent, and their crew was reckoned to be among the best in the world. However, what killed Nigeria Airways was the fact that patronage was not allowed. It was not operated like a commercial enterprise. Persons within government circles always get what they call rebate tickets, and actually it was part of the initiatives that killed the Nigeria Air. And that is why we are hoping that Nigeria Air will not go the ways of Nigeria Airways.
That's right. And of course, by the time Nigeria Airways run into stormy weather, financial weather, and so on and so forth, you had started to say all kinds of names. Nigeria Airways, ERR. It was arid. It was the flights were never on time or never on schedule, but it had a good safety record. No question about that.
One of the best around the world.
Yeah, one of the best. But then, by the time the aviation industry was also deregulated, Okada Air came and then posed a stiff challenge to Nigeria Airways until its final liquidation 15 years ago. That was in 2003. One of my memorable flights of Nigeria Airways was, I remember in 1990 at thereabout, Captain Paul Sahal. You know,
yes.
There was a flight, you know, from Lagos to New York direct, you know, at the time, 10 and a half hours or thereabout.
And I remember the unique uniform of the air hostesses, green, white, green.
That's right.
Beautiful.
But it was just mismanaged. That's
Precisely. I mean, you had management issues that ran it aground. Okay, let's take other headlines from the Authority newspaper this time. Above the nameplates, the other stories that we have read are also highlighted there with regard to the arrest of Chibok abductors, Chibok schoolgirls abductors, passage of the former CJN and others. But the lead story says with a kicker, killings. Ohaneze, Arewa, Afenifere and Pandef move to save Nigeria. Push for visionary president. Politicians have failed Nigerians. That's according to Ango Abdullahi. Federal government has no focus, says Obasanjo, and Uwodo threatens red card for bad leaders. And just below that, the text of that lead story, you have a headline: "Beware of Ponzi schemes." SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, warns Nigerians. Details can be found on page 3. 2019, Saraki, Otom, Tambuwal, PDP leaders meet in Ilorin. That's page 31. And aimed by Economic City, Chinese firm to inject $2.5 billion in power projects. And that's on page 6. Campaign for ICC's help against killer herdsmen begins. That's page 3.
All right, let's run through the stories on the Daily Sun front page. And let's go straight to the main headline. 2019, defection fever, Senate. States to witness mass exodus from ruling party. PDP leaders meet Saraki, Tambuwal Ahmed, Jonathan IBB in closed-door meeting in Mina. The stories can be found on pages 6 and 8 of the Sun newspaper. Now, below the photograph there, Buhari others mourn ex-CJN Katsinalu. Page 12 has the story. Then Court affirms Eze Ibekwe as authentic Eze Ndiwo of Kano. That's on page 4 and 5. And then federal government unveils Nigeria Air as new national carrier. Now, Bayo.
Well, let's talk about the political stories there now. You remember Governor Samuel Otom of Benue says that his party in the state has given him a red card. Well, the national vice chairman of the North Center of the party says that Governor Otom is not leaving the party. Suleiman Wamba says that the governor has not communicated his intention to leave to the party. He also added that the national chairman, Comrade Adams Oshiomhole, has invited him and others from Benue to resolve the issue. Meanwhile, newspapers are reporting that Governor Otom was along with Dr. Bukola Saraki, Governor Aminu Waziri Tambuwal, and others joined the chairman of the People's Democratic Party, which is Secondos, in a meeting in Ilorin. PDP spokesman Ologodia says it is a brotherhood meeting. The Nation titles that meeting of Saraki, Wike, Tambuwal, Otom as defection talks. And some leaders who describe themselves, described by Daily Trust as political leaders, have met in Abuja. They discuss about the state of the nation and the rising spate of killings in the country. Those who converge are the Afenifere, the Northern Elders Forum, Ohaneze Indigo, and the Pan-Niger Delta Forum. These associations are usually described as cultural associations, but the Daily Trust is reporting that it was a political meeting, and part of their resolution was that they are calling on President Buhari to stop the rising spate of killing or quit. By-election has been indicated by the Independent National Electoral Commission in 4 constituencies. This followed the declaration of 2 seats vacant in the Senate, 1 seat vacant in the House of Representatives, and 1 other seat vacant in the Cross River State House of Assembly. The by-elections are to be held on the same day. Now, comment about the story about Chibok girls. The Borno State Command has paraded 22 insurgent members, including one who claimed that he was a member of those who abducted Chibok girls from the 211 secondary school girls from Chibok Government Girls Secondary School. The 22 were paraded by Commissioner of Police Damian Chukwu. And 23-year-old Mayunwa Modu says that he was given 6,000 for his role in the abduction of the Chibok girls. Asked about the whereabouts of the Chibok girls, he says they are in Sambisa Forest. But however, he identified Baana Chigori as the person who knows where they are. But they, as the other members of the insurgents, are not allowed to go to where they are. The Inspector General of Police Force Intelligence Response Team, led by DASP Abakiari, says that they are using intelligence-driven investigation to ensure that they unravel all the activities that were involved in the 3 northeastern states.
All right, thank you, Bayo. Let's go to the editorial for today, taken from Daily Independent. It's still on the passage of a petroleum industry bill. Let me just take 1 or 2 lines from there before Bayo comes in. Recently, a coalition of civil society organizations across Nigeria, known as Publish What You Pay in Nigeria, revealed that the country loses at least 3 trillion naira annually due to non-passage of the petroleum industry bills. But you can take it from here.
Yes, the CSO is actually lamenting that Nigeria is losing about 3 trillion naira, and therefore the fact that the Petroleum Act of 1969 is still the one that is subsisting is aggravating the economic loss to Nigeria. You may recall that the National Assembly has passed the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill. There are 3 other counterparts, the administration, the community, and the financial bill, that are still subsisting. And it has, the editorial is lamenting that since 1999, the National Assembly has not been able to work on these bills to put our petroleum industry on the straight path. It also laments particularly the flaring of gas, and especially when we are faced with challenges of gas supply to run our thermal stations.
All right, Bayo, I'd like to thank you. Unfortunately, we haven't had time to discuss the destruction of a constituency project apparently spearheaded by Senator Dino Melaye in Kogi. The classrooms that he built were burned down by suspected thugs. Yes. Did the thugs think that they were punishing Dino Melaye, or the people who would have benefited from the use of the classrooms?
In fact, Governor of Kogi State has also come out to condemn it and said that it is the state that is losing and not the senator they think they were trying to get at.
Absolutely. Bayo, thanks a lot for being around today. Thank you. See you again tomorrow. All right, let's say good morning, Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll get ahead with 2 topics for conversation this morning.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Dettol team is visiting schools to teach children how to protect themselves from diseases. Do you know how we get illnesses like diarrhea, cough, and cold? No! They are spread through germs, which are everywhere. You collect germs that cause diseases. You pick up germs from any surface, like when you don't wash your hands after going to the toilet, while playing. And then you can get sick because of germs. That's why you need to fight germs to stay healthy by washing your hands and taking your bath with Dettol soap to protect from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Wash, wash, wash your hands. What you have to do is bath yourself. Dettol soap every day. Wash, wash, wash your hands.
The NTA Television College Jos admission forms for diploma program in film and television production, television engineering technology, broadcast journalism, and degree programs in mass communication, television journalism, and mass communication television production is now on sale. The sale of forms will commence 14th May and run to 13th August 2018 at the cost of 7,500 naira only per form, payable through the remitter platform in favor of NTA Television College Jos. Forms can be obtained from all marketing offices in NTA state capital stations, zonal centers, Training Directorate of the NTA Headquarters, Abuja, and the Office of the Academic Secretary of the NTA Television College, applicants are required to possess 5 credits in GCE, SSCE in relevant areas of study, including English and mathematics, in not more than 2 sittings. All completed forms attached with photocopies of credentials must be submitted on or before the 13th of August 2018 to the stations where the forms were obtained. For further inquiries, please contact the Office of the Academic Secretary on these numbers. Announcer, Registrar.
Fake news which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three
you are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah?
Welcome.
You take that one.
Yes.
Take that one.
You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have? You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice.
Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about.
Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food.
I'm going to bring Mrs. Mobu to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cooked.
Correct. Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The Nigerian broadcast sector is evolving. Operators, including cameramen and photographers, require new skills and techniques to churn out world-class productions. A unique opportunity is open to all. NTA TV College Jos is organizing a 4-week intensive short course in camera operation techniques aimed at enhancing the professional skills of cameramen and photographers, practicing and freshers. Date 16th July to 10th August 2018. Another 4-week intensive short course in photojournalism and photography holds 13th August to 7th September 2018. Venue for both courses is the TV College premises, NTA TV College, Rayfield, Jos. Fee 100,000 naira per participant. Accommodation inclusive. For more inquiries, contact us on 0806 980 9807 and 0703 660 7155. TV College, Jos. Training you to be the best you want to be.
For the first leg of our conversation this morning, we are taking off with this background report on vote buying put together by Mitaire Iben.
The governorship election in Ekiti State, which has been won and lost, was generally seen by political watchers as a litmus test for the 2019 general elections. While the Ekiti election was largely peaceful and the conduct orderly, there were unsavory reports of buying of votes aimed at swaying the choice of voters, especially on election day, a trend that was christened see and buy. Although the parties allegedly involved have repeatedly denied inducing voters on election day, observers who claimed to have witnessed the scenario see it as a sad commentary ahead of the 2019 general elections. Some voters were said to have voted on credit, while logistics to reward their induced choice were still being put together. This resort to money politics is not new in the country, but had manifested in the distribution of food and commodities by politicians, especially from the Second Republic to present dispensation. However, the brazen dimension money politics has assumed in the nation's electoral process is shameless and embarrassing to the nation. This brings to the fore the fact that though so much advocacy is ongoing on the need for violence-free and peaceful elections in the country, The voter education campaigns require new dimensions against vote buying, which is now taking center stage as a major electoral offense. The trend also underscores the desperation of politicians to lure voters with cash, not to mention the possibility that the funds used for such illicit purpose could be the people's commonwealth. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has promised to look into the issue of vote buying, especially in the build-up to the 2019 elections. But how can the trend be checkmated? Why would members of the electorate mortgage their choice and even their future for a paltry sum of money during elections? Why are electoral laws that provide penalties for electoral offenses not enforced? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will provide their perspectives shortly.
Thank you very much, Betayere, for that background report. Now we have with us in the studios two guests, at least, and the third one, of course, who will be joining us in the course of the conversation, our familiar guests on Good Morning Nigeria. First, we'd like to welcome at this time Mr. Samson Itodo, who is the Executive Director, Yaga Africa, Watching the Vote. Mr. Itodo, pleasure to have you with us.
Always a pleasure to be here.
All right. And then also here with us in the studios is Ezenwa Nwangu. Ezenwa Nwangu is Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reforms. Pleasure to have you gentlemen join us.
Thank you very much.
And
good morning.
welcome from the front lines.
All right, gentlemen, you're indeed welcome to the program. Now, see and buy was in the lips of many Nigerians before, during, and after the just concluded governorship election in Ekiti State. Whatever names, that it is called, vote buying poses a serious threat to the nation's electoral process and indeed the democracy. And I'd like Ezenwa Nwangu to come in here. Why has this persisted?
Well, thank you for having me. I think what has increased the furor around vote buying is because other things went well. It's not as if this has not been happening in, previous elections, but because INEC did up its game, there is then no reason to bring the hammer on INEC. So if you follow the trend, you will have seen that from Edo to Anambra to Ondo, these issues were there, strong. In fact, in some cases, I even said that it was a bazaar, in Edo for me. So why it has persisted is because we have refused to have deep reflections around the consequences in terms of what it does to the legitimacy of even the person who, who eventually wins the election. The moral legitimacy of leadership is eroded completely when, self-respecting people know that this victory, even if you may have won, but this victory is purchased. It puts an indelible, mark of disrespect on. And then the people who eventually also, the ones who make themselves available to be purchased, will not get the respect of the leader. Because he also knows. That's why you see a lot of arrogance in power. Because he knows you didn't make him. He knows he bought this victory. And in that situation, even your ability to make demands, to make demands is limited because he doesn't feel any obligation to you in any particular way. So it's coming on because more and more there is no definite conversation around how to engage it. It is the level of advocacy that we put into improving, election administration in our country that we can now say that INEC did a good job, for instance. It was not so before. Even in 2007, if you remember, the man who eventually won the presidential election said, look, thank you for declaring me, but there was something pretty wrong about these elections. So we went into Justice Ways. And from that time onwards, election administration has been improving. But the creepy, issue of vote buying, which we began to see subsequently, we've paid little attention to it. And that's why it's gaining the kind of momentum that we're seeing.
All right, Ezenwa, thank you very much. Sam Itodo, let's have your take on this. as he has explained, it's come to the fore now on the heels of the latest governorship election that the country has had. And it was always indicated ahead of the Ekiti governorship election that Ekiti will be a litmus test, for our readiness for 2019. ANEC has received plaudits for what it has done, but here we are, see and buy.
Yeah, thanks so much, and it's always a pleasure to be here. First, I agree with Ezenwa on the points about why this has escalated. But I also think that, first, this is just a manifestation of the crisis of democracy that we face and experience across the world. We know that democracy is actually in crisis. Across the world, the rise of populism, our own manifestation of this crisis and loss of faith in democracy on the part of citizens is what you see today. Because the growing trend is an indictment on the ruling political class, that they have indeed failed to perform their own duties and responsibilities under a social contract, and therefore citizens are now looking for immediate gratification, which is the major thrust of liberal democracy, because liberal democracy is about gratification. It could be immediate, it could be delayed. And so for them, they are more interested in getting that immediate gratification because they know for sure that when these politicians or these leaders assume office, they are not accountable to the people. And so it's an indictment on the ruling political elite. The second is also on the part of the citizens, beyond the loss of faith, is this conversation around what's our values as a people. And what do you think will make a citizen sell his vote for 5,000 or 2,000 naira, knowing fully well that it's a crime in our electoral law? And despite the level of voter education and public sensitization, you could see people literally in Ekiti actually opening their ballot papers and showing who are compromising the secrecy of their ballots. And nothing is done. And that is where the security agencies actually play a critical role. The law is very, very clear. Under Section 124 and Section 125 of the Electoral Act. And under Section 124 of the Electoral Act, it is categorized as bribery or conspiracy. And then if you look at Section 125, it talks about secrecy of the ballot. Now, anyone who is involved in this crime under Section 124, upon conviction, is liable to a fine of 500,000 and then or an imprisonment of 12 months. Now, if you look at Section 124, it says upon conviction, if you compromise the secrecy of the votes or you expose your ballot, you are upon conviction, you pay a fine of 100,000 or a imprisonment of 6 months. Now, look at these penalties. As we speak today, there are people who committed electoral crimes in Ekiti State. The security agencies are under a duty to tell us how many people were arrested and how many people are you going to prosecute. So that serves as a deterrence, because as agencies of protection in a democracy, they ought to perform their own functions. But I agree that we need a deeper conversation about this growing trend. But if we don't address this, we're going to get to a point, and that's where we are. And we made a statement in pre-Ekiti that election is going to be determined by the highest bidder. And that's exactly what happened. For 2019, we may have a president or we may have political leaders who actually bought the votes and not necessarily people asserting their sovereignty. Because this discussion about the sanctity of the vote and its secrecy thereof is a conversation that we need to have.
Your organization is interested in watching the vote.
Yeah.
And of course, you have informed us about what transpired in Ekiti State during that election. Now, do you by any chance have the, perhaps the authority to report to the security agencies on what you observe during an election? Because you, of course, have said that the security agencies have a role to play in this direction because these things are done openly during election.
Yeah.
Right. Have you ever made any representation to the security agencies that said, look, this is what we've seen, and what have you done?
We've done quite a lot. And first, let me put this in proper perspective. YAGA Africa Watching the Vote deployed 541 observers for the Ekiti elections to about 250 sampled polling units. And we deployed the parallel vote tabulation for the elections. And our observation cuts across the pre-election and election day. And we gathered information on the process as well as the results. And we independently verified the accuracy of the results as declared by INEC. Were there reports about compromise of the secrecy of the vote? Absolutely, yes. And that's even articulated in our report, because we have our reports already assembled and distributed to stakeholders. We forwarded recommendations to the security agencies on this particular issue. In the pre-election period, the working group of Watching the Vote had the opportunity to meet with the Commissioner of Police and met with traditional rulers and discussed this issue. But let's talk about electoral prosecution or prosecution of electoral offenses. I know that, first, there are three phases of electoral offenses prosecution. You've got the arrest, you've got investigation, and then you've got prosecution. Now, these three stages are performed by different actors. INEC, on election day, does not have the responsibility to actually arrest electoral offenders or those who are perpetrating vote buying. But they can draw the attention of the security agencies, and particularly the police and other security agents who are at the polling stations. And the police will arrest and then investigate, and then INEC will prosecute. There's a different conversation around whether we should categorize these as electoral crimes under our own electoral jurisprudence, or they are crimes in itself within extant legal laws like penal codes and the criminal code. But what you see oftentimes is these crimes are perpetrated right in front of security agencies. I was in Ekiti. I was in a particular polling unit, and I won't mention the polling unit. And the polling unit was situated close to a house. Now, as voters finish voting, they are directed into a particular house where you go collect that gift or money. It was happening in front of the police officers who were there. There are 5 of them who were there. They didn't. They knew. In fact, in some cases, they were actually smiling at what was happening, and they didn't take any action.
All right. Sami Todo, thanks a lot. Incidentally, we have right here with us in the studios, once again, bringing him to join in the conversation, Jimoh Moshood, the Acting Deputy Commissioner of Police and Force Public Relations Officer. DCP Jimoh Moshood, pleasure to have you again. We had you earlier in the week. We also had you before the Ekiti vote. You've had the benefit of listening to the other 2 guests sketching the broad outlines of the see and buy phenomenon and what should be the proper role of the law enforcement agencies. But you are here representing the police. Let's have your take.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Nigerians, and thank you for not tired of inviting us anytime issue like this comes up. It's quite important to let the last speaker know that every Nigerian have the power to arrest and hand over to the security agent, to the police force. Nothing's an offense, except what is stated in the law to be an offense. And the law stating the offense will give you the fact, the point to proof, and the procedure for which an offender will be processed and dealt with appropriately. As I speak with you today in Ekiti State, the command is taking to court several individuals that were arrested for sharing money during the day of the elections. And these are women leaders, and equally the ward leaders that are equally involved have been arrested. To say police is complacent or probably we refuse to do our duty is a disservice to the Nigerian police force, and which I take exception to. It would be wrong for anybody to say the police are watching. It's quite not the case. Because policemen that are deployed to election points, to voting points, and the polling booth and the other voting points are to ensure that there's secure environment. People can exercise their franchise without any intimidation, without any favor. So if that is their responsibility, there are other police personnel deployed, because people, we have listened to so many CSOs that have been accusing us that they met with us. Like he said, he has met with Commissioner of Police. We don't have it on record that he has met with Commissioner of Police or he has submitted any report to us. If people are committing an offense, we made the numbers available which people can call during the election, and response will come immediately. And we have said for all the cases that we have witnessed, arrests have been made, and all the cases that people have called us to, we have equally made arrests and they are being prosecuted. And I want to say lightly that if you look at section 124 and 125 of the Electoral Act, we talk about, it doesn't state see and buy. It talks about bribery, of bribing an individual to vote or not to vote during the election. Then 125 go further to tell you that if you expose the secrecy of the voting, then it's an offense. Then what constitutes, there should be point to prove all these activities, for instance, that when you raise up or you raise down, because if you look at the penal code, it's very explicit. If you look at the criminal code, criminal law, it's equally very explicit on the facts to prove. But that does not hinder or shouldn't be an encumbrance in us performing our duty. We have done very well in Ekiti, because people are saying you deploy 30,000 personnel and the see and buy issue are going on. What did you do? If you take the population of Ekiti, which is about 3 million, if you share 30,000 police personnel, these 30,000 include the police personnel in Ekiti state that have been there. Not only monitoring, securing election, we have to secure the people themselves, because you can't say because there's election, somebody who wants to commit other crime will not go in. If you share the strength of that 30,000 to about 3 million people in Ekiti state, you are going to have like 1 to 100 people. And if you look at the UN standard, you have 1 to 4 police personnel. So the election was not over-policed like people have been, the CSOs have been saying. We've done adequate deployment as it is desired. So I want to say that we didn't, we did not go back on our responsibility. Arrests have been made and these people have been prosecuted. But we want everybody to know that the CSOs and others have the responsibility to study the Electoral Act even before it is passed. When it is passed, they have the right during public hearing to equally make input. We as the Nigerian Police Force will continue to ensure that election security is guaranteed, and that is what we have done in Ekiti. Whatever is the takes from both sides, politics, CSO and the others, because if you look at the CSO themselves, they should appreciate us because Ekiti is a flashpoint. And quite a number of them, we've been working with the CSO that are attached to the situation room and others that are duly registered that have been coming to the Inspector General of Police, and we've been working a strategy to ensure that there's a free and fair, secure environment for a free and fair election. It is not our responsibility to tell people where they should thumbprint. I think it's their responsibility as a CS to go further, to meet with the stakeholders, especially the politicians and the others across board, to ensure that the electorate, when they go to polling booth, they behave themselves. And it is not now that somebody will start telling us this. We're quite familiar that even in the past we prosecuted a lot of people. People share soap, people share salt, people share sugar, and the rest in the past, and they are being apprehended by the police and charged to court. So we shouldn't wave on sentiment. We should go deep down into the record and see what the police have done in the past. So for Ekiti State, we've done our best to ensure that there's a secure environment. Whatsoever that happens, there are procedures in the Electoral Act for how such will be dealt with. So for now, that is what I have to let you know.
This film we should. You've told us that the primary responsibility of the police at the polling stations is to ensure security. Now, are there other offenses, are there other offenses that such policemen should also look out for and make arrests? Perhaps we know that police at the polling stations are not armed. So they are somehow limited. There's a limitation to what they could do in terms of arrests. But when they are there, and of course seeing people sharing money, which is yet another offense, another electoral offense, at the polling station, don't they have also the responsibility to make arrests?
Thank you so much. I want to start from your last question. There's no anywhere throughout Ekiti State, the 16 local government, where we have seen money being shared at the polling station. These people that were arrested far away, where they queue up to collect money. some money have been shared already. We arrested those who are sharing and equally those who are collecting. And like I said, not just an offense, except what is stated in the law to be an offense. And they will tell you procedure. Then you have to investigate to link that the money being shared is for the voting, because that have to be linked up. Because arresting somebody does not, what do you call it, pronounce the person guilty. You have to charge the person to court. And the essence of taking somebody to court is what we call, you have to do proper investigation. And investigation is a scientific approach to put the offender at the scene of crime, to actually tell the court, because the police is not the judge, that this is the person that have committed the offense. So like I told you earlier on, people are being taken to court today in the Ekiti State. And we want all the media out there that are watching, that are still present in the Ekiti State, to go and witness what takes place in court. Our responsibility go beyond only securing the venue of the election, either the voting unit or the polling center. It goes to anybody that's trying to commit any criminal act. If you go to the election ground with any weapon fashioned, even if it is pure water or anything that can fashion out to use to cause confusion. And by and large, we've been able to guarantee that. But you cannot satisfy everybody. Definitely you cannot. If we have gotten, we have beat our chest that we have achieved result 99% in securing the entire Ekiti State. The election observer themselves, other critical stakeholders will tell you they go in and come out of Ekiti State in peace. There's nobody that has been killed. There's nobody that has sustained injury, even among the election observer. But if people tend to now say the police is seeing an individual, you have to bring evidence that in so place, you watch a police officer seeing an individual taking money and he refuses to arrest. Then the police will ensure that such an officer is identified and dealt with appropriately. But the other individuals under the law, under the enabling law, have the right to equally effect arrest and draw the attention of the police officer and say, this person was caught with this SUV. And then the police will take on from there.
All right, DCP Jimoh Moshood, thank you very much. There are a number of points inherent in your explanation, and one of it has to do with ability to engage in diligent and successful prosecution of persons, who have been caught out with regard to see and buy. The issue doesn't have to do, see and buy doesn't have anything to do with the security cover provided by the security agencies. I think that there's been widespread commendation of the security agencies, in particular the police, for the level of security cover that was provided. What is deleterious, what is perceived to be injurious to the country's electoral process and therefore democracy has to do with see and buy. As the one Wago, listening to the DCP Jimoh Moshood talking about how, for instance, you can generate the proofs in your proofs of evidence with regard to the alleged commission of electoral offenses. In this case, what has been popularly referred to as see and buy. Electronic evidence, of course, is admissible if you have a photograph or you have a good shot, and then you see the chain of transaction. Is this such a difficult thing to engage in and then ensure that there is diligent prosecution and therefore deterrence?
Well, first, I think that one of the challenges of people who have responsibility to do a job in the country is that they engage in defensive public relations. Public relations is not to say that things went very well. You wouldn't have scored any points when you are dealing with a sociological situation, knowing that even if you send 30,000 policemen, that those your 30,000 would not all behave well. So you must make exception for the fact that there are some of your men who, if you look at the report, watching the votes, if you look at the watching the vote election verification result, we commended the police for their professionalism in providing security for the election. But let me tell you, let's backtrack a bit to Edo. Okay? I was with a national commissioner in a polling unit. The national commissioner who were watching, people who vote. It is the police that will say, follow who no road. The police will direct you to who to follow, to go and, in Edo State. The national commissioner saw it and went to the policeman and said, are you not seeing what is happening? And the man said, so what do you want me to do? Are you angry that they are collecting money? She's alive. So the point to be made is that we need to come to that point where you understand that this creepy issue of vote buying We as citizens, we have responsibility to arrest, but we don't take salary to arrest people. You are the one who is paid by state to do a particular job, and it's got to be done. There are no excuses for it. If, for instance, you want to even do diligence, there are people who make transfers. And you are aware. That's why you have intelligence. Intelligence is not just, the police is not just the physical intelligence. You also have intelligence. There are people who transferred monies. Go and investigate, bring all of those out. You don't come and say, oh, you know, civil society. We met with the commissioner of police before the election. We met with the AWE of Ado-Ekiti. We met traditional rulers having this conversation on a pre-election engagement. That's the much that citizens can do, to put those things out as civil society, and we did that. But having said that, let's backtrack a bit and look at, in a more holistic terms, what this whole vote buying thing constitutes. Sam talks about delayed gratification and immediate gratification. We need to come to that terms where we want to decide to clean our elections and election financing. When politicians visit traditional rulers for blessings, the citizens know what transpires. They know what happens when you make such visits. When you are inviting politicians to come and launch your church building towards election period, citizens are aware what all of those constitutes. We need to sit down as a people and say, look, how does political parties direct, whether direct or indirect primaries, what constitutes people? This vote buying starts from there. The delegate selection that you see are criminally expensive, and we don't pay any attention to them. So when I talked about a holistic conversation, I am saying, look, this is where we are heading to. 2019 is the biggest threat to 2019 will be commodification of votes. The security agencies, INEC, civil society needs to come to a room and have a conversation about how we are going to engage these issues. And it's important to do so.
Well, thanks. I'm wondering, Kyria, because we're pressed for time, we have a second topic. Look, let us try to also interrogate, for instance, the effect of see and buy, that's to say vote purchase. Is it necessarily a swing factor in an election? And allied to that is, what then is the utility of all the pre-election campaigns? That at the point that the voter goes in there to make his mark on the ballot box, to the extent that he's assured of, say, 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 naira, he or she immediately changes his or her mind and then votes the other way.
I think that first, and the response to this will be, when we talk about, maybe we need to rejig the regime of voter education to more political education. And political education that emphasizes the value of democracy and citizens' participation. And what does it actually mean to vote in an election? The fact that when you go vote, you're actually employing people to work for you. You're conferring on people and vesting in them power to hold trust for you and take decisions on your behalf, and they have to constantly report to you. But because that level of public education or political education is very, very low, that is why you continue to see this. And if you look at the different manifestations of the sociology of the Nigerian voter, I'm one who I actually fear the Nigerian voter. Because it is the same voter who will assure you that they are going to vote for A, and when they get to the polling booth, they change their mind. What we need to do is to discourage citizens. And there has to be a citizens' uprising against this, because it's beyond what the state can do. There has to be a citizens' uprising that even when politicians come to give you money to buy your votes, you tell them no, that we want to vote based on our conscience and based on capacity and the ability of an individual to actually deliver. And this, moving to 2019, is elevating the conversation around political leadership. And what kind of leadership do we actually want? Because if leadership is going to be bought and we're going to compromise, then to a great extent, we don't even have any locus whatsoever to speak after the elections. And that's where that's a conversation we need to have. The second also deals with the role that INEC, National Orientation Agency, plays, as well as civil society in this public education. You know what's even interesting? Even in Ekiti, in about over 78% of polling stations that we deployed observers, INEC ensured that the cubicle and the ballot boxes are situated in parameters that will not compromise the secrecy of the vote. But voters still went in, voted, and when they were coming to cast their vote, opened their ballot papers. Whilst insisting that INEC needs to enforce its guidelines with respect to those parameters, but it's important that in incidences where states need to respond, they actually perform their functions. And I just need to make the point that civil society are citizens. And when you talk about civil policing or modern trends of democratic policing, yes, we've got the power to arrest, but our report is intelligence for you to actually perform your function. But don't discredit civil society when they, out of their own altruistic goal and objective, in performance of their own functions, provide the police information. And I just need to conclude by making the point that, again, this country belongs to all of us. And when we identify challenges of this nature, we identify them and speak out because we want agencies that are responsible to perform their functions. And I make bold to say that in my presence, I have seen police officers who were complicit and they didn't take any action whatsoever to address this problem. That doesn't take away from what Ezenwa said, that in our statement we were clear that the police were very professional in managing election security. But it's widespread that vote buying happened in the presence of security agencies and they didn't take any action.
All right. You know, this practice is quite diverse and pervasive. You know, of course, if you look back at the elections of Hari in Edo and other states before that of Ekiti State last Saturday. Now, the police are also Nigerian citizens. And from what you have posited, it does seem that the the electorate actually sold their votes clearly. You know, there's an indication that Nigerians are willing to sell their votes. And of course, they did openly before everyone. So now the question will be, the conversation you are asking for, how will it emanate? Under which platform? How will it be arranged? The CSOs are there. And the orientation agency is also there. Now, how will this come to fruition? You know, if, of course, we have to table it as a national problem.
We're already having the conversation here.
So thank you already.
Yeah,
we are thanking you that you are putting this on national, front burner for conversation.
Yeah.
If you shied away from this, you take the number of Nigerians who are watching this program this morning. The point to be made is that, yes, we will blame security agencies, we will blame, but the people themselves must make a conscious determination to ensure that our election is clean. And one way to do that is to say, look, if the security agencies move in on that very day, while that is going on, to arrest a culprit in the presence of, voting, you are likely going to see the political parties raise another cry that their supporters are being intimidated. Which itself raises another challenge. So it is the people, especially as far as we want security to do their job, but the people themselves must make a conscious determination. And I think Sam said something like that. We need a citizen uprising against vote buying.
All right, well, thank you very much. Let's bring in acting Deputy Commissioner of Police, Juma Moshood, again into the conversation. Part of what we are seeing now, these are your closing thoughts I would like to hear from you. Yes, there's been commendation for INEC, say in the case of Ekiti. There's also been commendation for the security agencies. In the past, in terms of the corruption of the electoral process, INEC officials, some of them, of course, are on trial now, and security agencies were often compromised, according to, the veterans of this process. But it would appear that to the extent that many of the loopholes have been blocked now, you can't falsify results very easily, you can't, get to do some of the things you're doing. We are now seeing the open stock exchange of see and buy. How familiar are law enforcement agencies, in particular with the police, with the electoral law, and therefore have a proper understanding of recognizing when an offense is being committed in their view. I mean, we see simple traffic offenses in the cities and elsewhere, and law enforcement agencies are just walking by. What does this mean going forward for the police, for instance?
Thank you so much. I want to start by saying that every Nigerian have the duty under the law to be law-abiding, and equally to ensure that they know what their civic responsibility is. Because it's not enough to say that the police are paid to make arrests. Like I keep on insisting that the individuals should know that it is their civic responsibility to ensure that if an offender is seen outside the purview of a police personnel, they let the police personnel know. When you dwell second to the last speaker dwell essentially on intelligence. Intelligence lies with the people. If the intelligence lies with us, we wouldn't look out for the intelligence. It's the information that is protected that people are given to us that we work on, and it becomes an actionable intelligence that we rely on. But in the case of Ekiti, for all the identified offenses that have been committed, we've made arrests. And like I told you, they are going to court. In Rivers, 7 to 8 of our personnel that were involved were tried and dismissed, and they were charged to court. And equally, ANEC official, we are the one that do the investigation and the prosecution. More than 20 of them were taken to court. Some were remanded to prison custodies, and some were eventually convicted. But the bottom line is that we are not running into any controversy or contract with any CSO. We know we are hot stakeholder in ensuring that election security is achieved in every part of the country. And that is why the arrangement put in place by police and INEC, which is Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, is there. We harmonize and we look at, like you said, the loophole have been blocked because we have made sure that each state, with its own peculiarity, make recommendation on how those peculiarity will be addressed at the first secretary level. It's not the issue of giving directive and order from the first secretary. We take input from the state, and this is what we are doing. But before the election, we engage in training of our personnel on the Electoral Act. We print out those electoral offenses. Mr. Esenwa will confirm to you because in the past we've been partner in ensuring that we circulate this to our personnel for them to be aware what constitutes an electoral offense and what is their role and responsibility in that act. But if, like the two cases they have cited, they have not been able to tell us if they actually go to the police station and report or to a superior police officer to take action. Because if you don't do so, if you are writing a report, you must be able to pin down to such an individual officer so that we don't rely essentially on hearsay of what people have said.
All right, DSP, we should, the loopholes have been closed, but others are also opened. That's why we're talking about buy and sell this morning, or see and buy rather this morning. Thank you so much. Now, let's look at Nigerians' reaction to this conversation by way of tweets. We have a number of them here now. And the first one from Festus Akimboewa, sad that our politicians have become very innovative and efficient in the business of vote buying, also known as see and buy. We must understand that the see and buy is more than money exchanging hands on election day. Cash transfer and the constituency projects are all part of vote buying.
And this is from Shakiru. 99% of the voters are poor, so they need the money. They will collect anything given to them. Government should stop all money bags.
All right, also from Sakiri, vote buying and money politics can be stopped when we make political office non-attractive for money. We should close all ways of corruption in the offices. Primary elections should be from the grassroots. Registration fee for candidates should be free.
And Suleiman Zuntu tweets, the government, the electorate, and CSOs have a role to play. The political way to prevent such act of vote buying isn't there. What we say is a manifestation of abject poverty that will go a long way in mortgaging our future.
And now, Sani Michael Mokaji, the trend of vote buying in Nigeria as championed by 21 leading opposition parties portend that nothing has changed from the status quo. It also tells the level of poverty, illiteracy in the land. If we could conduct a free and fair election as way back as 1993, I wonder why we can't do so now.
Unsa has another tweet. I think we are making progress with our elections. Now, we aren't talking about death or falsified results from hotel rooms, but voters collecting money to vote. It's big progress. Voters should be encouraged to increase their fees. to a point when politicians won't be able to pay. Well,
All
of
right.
course, that will be compounding a felony.
Exactly.
That's an offense.
And
that shouldn't be encouraged.
We are going to stop here, but we would like to just thank ChangeNet, Ndudim C, Dele Jackson Solomon, Habiba Kwara Zashi, and Cecilia Okoramadu, whom we can't read out their tweets this morning because at this point time is against us. So let's conclude this first leg of our conversation this morning. And at this point, we'd like to thank Sam Itodo, Executive Director, IAGA Africa, watching the vote. Thank you for coming.
Thank
on
you
the
so
program.
much.
Yes, and of course, Ezenwa Nwagu, Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reforms. It's been nice sharing your thoughts this morning on this very important topic. Thank you for coming. And our regular DSP and First Piero.
So
DSP,
you keep calling him DSP. I mean, I'm
DCP.
sure he will be upset. That's about 3 or 4 ranks below.
below what it is. So the acting DCP and Police PRO, Jimo Mshud. We thank you for defending the police effectively on this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Now we take a short break now. When we return, we'll move to the second segment of our conversation, which has to do with Muslim pilgrimage. Stay with us.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Oh boy, climb this thing now. No be only to connect lights. Come you and yourself now. Now wow. Oh boy, come down now. Oga Kasali electrician who would they look for with this? Oh, Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry, I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
Oh boy, what you mean talk makes sense? Oh boy, we could carry this ladder from
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back. But if you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We are reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. In a few weeks' time, the annual Muslim pilgrimage to Mecca in Saudi Arabia will commence. And Nigeria has always had a large contingent of pilgrims to perform the holy rites.
Yes, Kinsley, already preparations to commence the airlift of Nigeria's pilgrims have been concluded. And come this Saturday, the first set will leave for the Holy Land.
And joining us on the studios now to discuss the preparations for Hajj 2018, we have Alidu Shuti. He is head of licensing at the National Hajj Commission of Nigeria. Alidu Shuti, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
It's nice to be with you.
All right.
Good morning.
Okay, now, gentlemen, you're welcome. A lot of background.
There is another guest who is Goni Sanda. He's head of aviation desk, also of the National Hajj Commission of Nigeria. Goni Sanda, pleasure that you are with us on the program.
Good morning.
Okay. We're sorry about that. I didn't omit you. You're welcome, Goni Sanda. And I'd like to start with you at this point. You know, a lot of background preparations have been made towards a successful Hajj operation for the year 2018. Now, tell us what specific things that have been done to ensure a successful Hajj operations this year.
Yes, for this year's Hajj operation,
we are expected to commence the airlift on the 21st. As we are speaking now, our advanced team for the preparation of Hajj have arrived in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And it comprises the national reception team who are charged with receiving the pilgrims at the airport when they arrive the kingdom, the members of the accommodation who are charged with the responsibility of providing accommodation for our pilgrims in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and also the members of the feeding committee who are in charge of providing feeding to the pilgrims. Flynas is a Saudi-based carrier. And for this year, we are going to use 15 airports for the airlift of the pilgrims all over the country. We have Kano, Maiduguri, Port Harcourt, Gombe, Bauchi, Duse, Mina, 15 airports for the airlift of the pilgrims. And also the national medical team have been inaugurated, and they are ready to accompany the pilgrims to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So everything is, we are ready for the airlift to commence on Saturday.
Well, thank you, Goni Sanda. But the question next to Alido Shuti is as follows. The Hajj proper is not until a few weeks. That will be sometime in August. Why this early airlift of intending pilgrims?
Yes, thank you very much. Like you said, Hajj is few days away. But because of the large number of pilgrims we have, there is need for us to start moving them to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia gradually, until we conclude the movement of the intended pilgrim to the kingdom. It's not possible for us to airlift everybody same day or same week. So it has to be turn by turn. First to come, first to go. First to pay, first to go.
Do we have a sense of the potential number of pilgrims that could be airlifted and when the airlifting will stop?
Yes, for 2018 Hajj, you know Hajj is being managed by two entities. One by State Pilgrims Welfare Boards, and two by private Hajj operators. And these Pilgrims Welfare Boards, there are 36 Pilgrims Welfare Boards, agencies or commission, with FCT, Muslim Welfare Board, and with Nigerian Armed Forces. They fall under the category of government. And for the private Hajj operators, they have their own quota, which is 20,000. But for this year's Hajj, as I'm talking to you here, for the private Hajj operators, about 16,500 have registered to take part in 2018 Hajj. While for the intended pilgrims from the State Pilgrims Welfare Board, they are around 32,300 as at this morning.
Well, I think in the past and in some cases we've had the issue of experiencing difficulties, with airlines, who are engaged in uplifting Nigerian pilgrims. And I want to ask Goni Sanda what specific arrangement has been made to ensure that airlines will not fail you this time around.
Yes, that thing is in the past when we don't have the capacity. But now, in the past, the airlines go outside and lease aircraft. But now, the indigenous carriers have enough capacity. For example, now, if you go to Kano Airport, there are 3 Boeing 747s by Max Air. It's Nigeria, and they are all 5 November registration, registered by Nigeria, owned by Max Air. And the capacity of each can carry 550 pilgrims. So not like in the past when our carriers go outside and lease aircraft. That's the time when we used to have such problem. But now our indigenous carriers have enough capacity, and the aircraft are here in Nigeria just waiting for the time to come to commence the airlift.
Well, still on the issue of airlifting, I'm sure we are all familiar with reports in the past, when sometimes the Saudi authorities themselves have had to put their foot down or otherwise, give us some grace on account of logistic challenges. What should intending pilgrims for 2018 expect?
Yes, we have made adequate arrangement for the airlift. Like you all know, this Hajj is a comprised movement of large number of pilgrims. Like this year, we're expecting about 3 million Muslims to perform the Hajj in Saudi Arabia. And all this, they are going through only 2 airports, the Mecca airport, the Jeddah airport and the Medina airport. So that's why the Civil Aviation Authority of Saudi Arabia, they have to make a timetable for all the countries, because the traffic of 3 million within short period of time is very difficult to manage. So that's why they have a schedule for each country. You come gradually. If they say everybody will come in, it's not possible. So we have to follow the schedule. If you have more than 25,000 pilgrims, of which Nigeria we are more than that, you must start about maybe 1 month to the time for you to be able to finish the airlift, because the airport has a limitation of capacity. So that's why we are starting very early, in line with the regulation of Saudi Arabia. So what we need from the pilgrims is for them to be law-abiding citizens. When they are asked to come, they should come to the airport at when due. They should not disregard the message when the officials ask them to come out. Let them come out at at the right time.
Yeah. Okay, I'll leave it to you. The Hajj Commission is said to have injected innovative ideas to ensure a successful uplifting of Nigerian pilgrims to Saudi Arabia. But there's another issue here I would like you to tackle, and that has to do with ensuring that all the pilgrims are in good health, so that people don't go there and develop some kind of illness and all of that, because in the past we've had Nigerians that had issues of health while in Saudi Arabia.
Yes, thank you very much. This issue of medical is one of the core duties of National Hajj Commission of Nigeria, if you check the content of our Establishment Act. That is why every year the Commission set up National Medical Team. This National Medical Team is going to take care of the entire contingent from Nigeria. Either you are from state board or from private tour operators. And the Commission makes sure that relevant professionals, medical doctors, pharmacists, and nurses, like for this 2018 Hajj, as my colleague has mentioned, as I'm talking to you now, some of them are already in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, waiting to receive our pilgrims. And they are there with relevant drugs. Because there are specific ailments that is conversant among the pilgrims, especially this issue of malaria and what have you. So they are in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia with relevant drugs for these intended pilgrims.
Now, you said there are specific elements, yes, and that also goes for other nations, you know, that will be there. Well, of course, as Sanders said, that the Nigerians or have already been advised to be cautious and, of course, to take advice on perhaps the logistics and other aspects. You know, what about some ailments that could be transmitted to Nigerians there? Is there any precautionary measure being taken in that respect?
The national medical team, from time to time, have been issued, even from Nigeria here, have started giving a talk to all intending pilgrims. Because when we started with these town hall meetings in all departure centers. And these town hall meetings was attended by members of our national medical team, where they educated all intending pilgrims and stakeholders on how to take good care of themselves when they arrive the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So this medical talk is a continuous process in the aircraft, on arrival in the kingdom, in their hotels, in their accommodation, and in their tents. All right,
Alhaji Shuti, thank you very much. Do we have a sense of what the Hajj fair is for this year?
Oh, the Hajj fair is about for this year, we have, each state has its own different Hajj fair, but it ranges from 1.39 to 1.5.
Okay, now let's talk about this now. In the past, the Nigerian airport, rather the airport in Jeddah, is closed without Nigerians conveying her pilgrims. That has happened in the past. What is the guarantee that this time around we are not going to be found wanting in this direction?
Yes, as I told you before, we have excess. We even have excess capacity. Like I mentioned before, we have 3 carriers. Let me just give you the background. Like the Max Air, they have 3 aircraft. And each aircraft within that period can be able to airlift at least 13,000 pilgrims. So 13,000 times 3. That's capacity of one airline. And we have Medview. They have 2 aircraft, and they have the capacity of, they have combined capacity of like 700, and they can operate at least 22 flights into the kingdom. So when you add the capacity of the 3 airlines, they have combined capacity of airlifting up to 70,000 pilgrims. But right now, what we have, what we registered is about 33,000. So the capacity is almost double the number of pilgrims we're having. So
the same airlines that are airlifting the pilgrims will be the same airlines that will return the pilgrims.
Yes,
is that correct?
The same airline, yes.
Okay. Now, there were also in the past issues of Saudi authorities picking up Nigerians because they were alleged to have been in possession of certain contrabands, either, tropical fruits or tropical foods. So what are the do's and don'ts for intending pilgrims? What should you have in your possession? What shouldn't you have in your possession?
Yes.
Especially cola nuts.
Yes. What we normally do, there is this pilgrims education and orientation. So each, all the 36 states, Pilgrims Welfare Board and FCT, Muslim Pilgrims Welfare Board, they have that department which is in charge of pilgrim education and orientation. So they have the program, they always enlighten the program, the pilgrims.
No, but let's have a sense of what, just speaking on television now,
yes.
What should you have and what shouldn't you have? So you get out of harm's way, you stay out of the trouble of the authorities. Let's shoot it, let's have your take on
for
this.
2018 Hajj, like my colleague has mentioned, this information is already at the doorstep of all intending pilgrims. Anything like hard drug, should not be carried to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Weapons should not be carried into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Cola nuts should not be carried into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Even drug, before you, if we are on medication, yes, there is need for our medical team to assess you. You can't just on your own carry drug into the kingdom. It's not allowed.
What is the issue with cola nut, for instance? Let's have an understanding of that.
The issue of cola nut is a policy from Saudi Arabia that if our country...
Is it a stimulant?
If as a country, there's a policy, you don't want this particular thing in your country, whoever is going to that country have to abide.
Because Kingsley asked this question because it's very pertinent. Because Nigerians eat a lot of cola nuts. All right, gentlemen. When is the Hajj rite starting, and when will Nigerian pilgrims begin to return? At what point will they begin to return? Let me bring in our friend Sanda here.
Yes, the Hajj rite normally starts on the 8th of Zulhijjah, which is equivalent to 19th of August. So that's when the Hajj rite will start. And our pilgrims are expected to start returning back to Nigeria on the 28th of August. So that's the time they are expected to start coming back. And
is there anything else that you would like intended pilgrims to get to know ahead of the commencement of the airlifting, which is just 2 days away?
We just want to use this opportunity to assure Nigerian pilgrims that the Commission is fully prepared in terms of all logistics in Mecca, in Medina, and at Mashahir for 2018 Hajj. In Medina, we have secured accommodation for intended pilgrims around Markaziyah. This Markaziyah is like a GRA of Medina, where pilgrims, within 2-3 minutes, they are already in the Holy Mosque. They don't have to trek for, the maximum is 2-3 minutes. And we have secured this between 3 and 4 star hotel for them. And for buses, we have VIP buses with gents inside all the buses. And we have also completed arrangements for their feeding in Mecca, in Medina, and at Mashahir. And at Mashahir, we have made provision for AC tents because of the weather. And we want to use this opportunity to advise them not to move around under the sun because of the weather. And they should take more water.
Shuti, thanks. I would like you gentlemen to speak on this some more, because we had cases in the past where the Pilgrims Welfare Commission or boards had issued the advisory that persons who are either heavily pregnant, who have some medical condition on account of age or some other deleterious situation, should stay back. Is that going to be enforced? Will you enforce that at the boarding gate? Or, you wave them on to let them go, and then sometimes we have complications arising. Go ahead, let's hear from you.
This thing is enforced throughout the period of the registration. Like pregnant women are not allowed to go and perform Hajj. So at each point, at each state, we have this national medical team. So they will do the pregnancy test even like 2-3 months to the commencement of the airlift. And also when the time approaches, by the time they invite them to come for like orientation, they do the test there also. And also at the airport, we have the medical personnel. So they will also cross-check to make sure that they don't allow the pregnant women.
Now, let's bring in the aspect of excess luggage. Of course, Nigerians are known for that, not just pilgrims, but other Nigerians who travel far and wide across the globe with excess luggage. So how are you going to tackle that? Is that incorporated, in the planning of this year's pilgrim?
Yes, honestly, this has been thoroughly addressed during the enlightenment programs for all our pilgrims, where it is mentioned to them that each of the pilgrims is entitled to only 132 kg check-in luggage and 1 8 kg carry-on luggage. So anything beyond that one, you have to take your luggage to excess luggage carrier. And I want to tell you, for the past few years, our pilgrims are complying, and we have noticed a lot of improvement vis-a-vis the issue of excess luggage.
Thanks a lot. And lastly, gentlemen, Kieran, so that we can take our complimentary segments. Now, I asked earlier about the fare for this year's Hajj. You said the range is between 1.3 and 1.5. For the early birds, who is then going to bear the cost? Because assuming I'm a pilgrim, and then you will lift me on the 21st, and the pilgrimage isn't going to start, say, until about 4 weeks. And then you will lift Kieran, who comes in, say, 3 days to the commencement of the pilgrimage. Now, who is going to take care of my own cost? Because I would have had a head start of 3 weeks.
Yes, what we normally do is we have the policy of first in, first out. So what we do is we make sure that the number of days you stay in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, whether you go on the first flight or the last flight, is almost the same. Because if you go on the first flight, you will come back on the first flight on the return leg. And if you go on the last flight, you come back on the last flight on the return leg. So we have that policy of first in, first out. Okay. So that's why the average number of days pilgrim will spend in the kingdom is almost the same.
We don't need for additional funding or something? Because
no.
You talked about the cost.
No, it's the same. The period is the same. Virtually the same.
Okay. All right, first in, first out. Yes. That's the policy. Well, gentlemen, I would like to thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Goni Sanda, Head of Aviation Desk, the National Hajj Commission of Nigeria. Thanks a lot for being with us.
Thank you very much.
And Alidu Shuti, Head of Licensing, also of the National Hajj Commission. Gentlemen, thanks a lot for being around on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
All right, so let's go over now to our sports desk, and there are still matters arising from this year's FIFA World Cup.